In the third year after we had started from scratch and finally found success, Julian and I had our first real fight. He was furious, clenching his teeth and pointing at me with rage as he shouted, "Emma, I do not want to see you again." I disappeared from his life completely, just as he wanted. But when he realized I was truly gone, when every trace of me had vanished from his world, he seemed to lose his mind. It happened in the study. Julian was yelling, his finger pointed at me in anger. I, on the other hand, remained calm. I took a deep breath and said softly, "Then let us get divorced." For a moment, he looked stunned, as if he could not believe I had just said those words. "What did you say?" he asked, his voice lower but no less sharp. Without a word, I reached into the bag beside me and pulled out a slightly wrinkled agreement. I had rehearsed this moment in my mind countless times, yet my hands still felt heavy, as if filled with lead. I carefully checked the papers before handing them to him, trying my best to stay composed. I avoided his gaze, worried he might see the vulnerability in my eyes. "I do not love you anymore," I said quietly. "Let us get divorced. After so many years together, I only asked for a peaceful separation." I did not think that was too much to want. Julian stared at me intently, as if trying to truly see me for the first time in years. After a long, suffocating silence, he suddenly knocked the agreement to the floor in anger. The force of it nearly knocked me down as well. The dizziness that followed made me aware of how weak my body had become. Still, I steadied myself, refusing to fall. Then came his voice, sharp and unforgiving. "Emma, you want a divorce? Fine, I will grant your wish. But the moment you walk out that door, do not even think about coming back." I held myself upright, forcing a polite smile as I replied, "I hope you will not regret what you said today." Sure enough, his expression darkened even more. After being together for so long, we knew exactly how to hurt each other. Watching the last trace of tenderness in his eyes vanish, watching pain turn into cold indifference, I thought it would make me feel victorious. But instead, it felt like someone had reached into my chest and crushed my heart in their fist. The pain was sharp and heavy. I fought back the emotion and the discomfort spreading through my body. I turned and walked upstairs to pack. I gathered just a few clothes. That was all I needed. As I was about to leave, I paused in front of the wall where our wedding photos still hung. The photo showed the two of us smiling so brightly, so happily. I knew, in that moment, I might never see that smile on his face again. Not for me. I did not know how long I stood there staring. It was only when the impatient driver downstairs honked the horn, the sound loud and sharp, that I came back to my senses. I gently closed the door behind me and carried my suitcase down the stairs. Julian stood at the bottom, silent and cold. In the past, he would never have let me carry anything heavy. He would rush to my side, take everything from my hands, and tease, "How could my precious wife carry these things? Let me do it." But those days were over. Sweet memories had become part of a past I could no longer touch. This time, it was just me. I pretended not to care, walked down with my luggage, and opened the door without looking at him again. Outside, the light rain had started to fall, and a gust of cold wind swept over me. I shivered. Just as I was about to step out, Julian's voice called from behind. I stopped. For a moment, I hoped he might say something that would make me turn around, that would soften this incredibly difficult decision I had made, but he stayed silent. The pause dragged on, and then, there was nothing. I took a breath, gathered my strength, and stepped outside, closing the door behind me. A crashing noise rang out from inside, shattering glass, the sound of cups or plates breaking. But I did not look back. I returned to the house Julian and I had bought when we first got married. Back then, the company had not gone public. We were just an ordinary couple like any other. That small home still held our shared memories. I thought maybe it could be a place for me to rest, to start over quietly. It had been so long since anyone lived there. I expected it would feel abandoned. When I got out of the car, the rain was pouring harder than before. I had no umbrella, so I ran toward the building with my suitcase. My clothes quickly soaked through, and my chest ached from the run, but I ignored it all. I just wanted to get inside. I took the elevator upstairs. I found the long-lost key and slowly inserted it into the keyhole, but no matter how hard I turned it, the door would not open. Just as I was frowning in confusion, the neighbor next door, hearing the noise, opened her door and peeked out. "Emma, why are you here so late?" she asked, her eyes widening. Didn't you sell this house already? Her questions came one after another, making my head throb. She must have noticed how dazed I looked because she walked over and gently held my arm. Emma, are you alright? Where is Julian, or Julie? Let me call Ian to come get you. That name stirred something in my memory. Yes, this was the house Julian and I had mortgaged when we decided to start fresh together. My memory seemed to be slipping more and more lately. I saw the neighbor pull out her phone and begin dialing. I quickly stopped her. Please don't, he is very busy. She gave me a look. One I had seen many times before. You always say that, no matter how busy a man is, he should take care of his wife. Otherwise, what is the point of having a home? I gave her a faint smile but said nothing. A cold wind drifted in from the corridor's open window, waking me up a bit. I straightened my shoulders and said, "Thank you for your concern. I just forgot something and came to get it. I am done now." Even after that, she insisted on walking me downstairs. I could not refuse her. So I let her accompany me. When we reached the entrance, I gently persuaded her not to see me off. I told her I had already called a taxi and urged her to head home before it got too late. Watching her figure disappear upstairs, I let out a long sigh. I was just wondering where I could go next when my phone rang. It was Julian. It felt like a piece of driftwood had suddenly appeared in the middle of the vast sea, and I grabbed onto it instinctively. "Emma, what are you doing?" Julian's voice came through, sharp and questioning. "Why did you go back to the place we used to live?" I hesitated, unsure how to explain. Before I could respond, his voice turned impatient. "You are the one who wanted the divorce. Could you stop dragging me into your personal mess?" "Okay, it will not happen again," I whispered. My voice came out choked, shaky. There was silence on the other end. Julian seemed caught off guard. I had always been strong. I never showed my vulnerability. No wonder he was surprised. Then I heard him speak again, his voice cold and distant. "Emma, you were the one who said you wanted a divorce. I just did what you asked. Do not start acting like the victim now. Who are you trying to fool?" Hearing his tone, I ended the call without another word. Yes, it had all been my choice. So what right did I have to feel wronged now? My emotions tightened around me like an invisible net. Everything that had happened recently rushed into my mind at once. My chest tightened, my vision spun, and then, darkness. When I opened my eyes again, everything around me was white. For a moment, I thought I had arrived in heaven. A nurse beside me noticed I was awake and quickly went to get the doctor. The doctor soon appeared and shined a small flashlight into my eyes, making me dizzy. After the examination, he looked serious. "Your condition is worsening," he said. "We cannot say when, but you may fall into a deep sleep one day and not wake up again. I strongly advise you to consider surgery soon. It will not remove the entire tumor, but if successful, it could extend your life." I watched his lips move, his words echoed in my ears from all directions, but I could hardly focus. I shook my head gently to clear my thoughts. "I will think about it," I said softly. He sighed, clearly concerned, and left me alone. Just then, my phone rang again. I picked it up with effort. It was Julian, but the voice that answered was not his. "Julian, what would you like to eat today?" a woman asked sweetly. "Whatever you want," Julian replied with a gentle tone I had not heard in a long time. I froze, then I laughed to myself quietly. At least, when I left this world, Julian would not be lonely. Still, something sour twisted in my chest. Before I could process what I felt, his voice came back on the line. "Since you want the divorce, let's meet next Monday at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau." His words were cold, businesslike. "All right," I managed to say. He hung up immediately. Suddenly, I remembered the vows he had whispered to me on our wedding day. "I, Julian, swear that in this lifetime, there will be no woman but Emma." And just when he was about to speak of the consequences of breaking that vow, I had stopped him. Back then, I thought we would never need them. When you truly love someone, it becomes unbearable to watch them suffer, even just a little. I had imagined countless times a future where he and I would grow old together, but reality had a way of proving me wrong. Life, I realized, is unpredictable. After that phone call, my heart felt like lifeless wood. I spent my days quietly sitting in the hospital courtyard, soaking in the sunlight. Sometimes, I would sit there the entire day without moving. "Emma, what are you doing here?" a familiar voice called out. I slowly looked up, trying to recognize the person standing in front of me. His face seemed familiar, but I could not quite place him. "It's me, Henry," he said with a small smile. back in college, Julian and I both chased after you." He chuckled softly. What a shame he got to you first. He kept talking, catching up on old times, but then his tone changed. "What's wrong with you? Why are you here? Where's Julian?" His questions came one after another, but I struggled to find the words. My mind had become slower these days, and I could only sit there in silence. Then suddenly, as if he had noticed something shocking, Henry stepped closer and held me tightly. "Emma, a brain tumor?" he asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. His face was pale, his expression full of disbelief. After a moment, trying to sound hopeful, he added, "Medical science is very advanced now. You will get better." I nodded slightly, glancing down at the red hospital wristband on my arm. I was the one who was sick, yet I found myself trying to comfort him. The thought made me laugh softly, as if I had stumbled upon some strange little joke. Seeing me laugh, Henry seemed somewhat relieved. "I just started working at this hospital," he told me. "If you need anything, you can find me in the neurology department." "Okay," I replied quietly. For several days after that, Henry visited me often. Julian never came. One day, Henry sat by my bed and asked, "Where's Julian? Why is it always just you here? Our company is going public," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "He's been very busy." Henry frowned. "You're in this condition and he is still working. Does he even know what matters most right now?" "It's all right," I murmured. "I can take care of myself." Before I could finish my sentence, a terrible cough overtook me. My chest shook violently, and I could hardly breathe. Henry immediately helped me sit up, gently patting my back while muttering curses at Julian under his breath. I could not bear to hear him criticize Julian. After some hesitation, I decided to tell Henry everything. Although he felt both familiar and distant to me, I trusted him enough. When I finished my story, he looked at me seriously. "Emma," he said slowly, "this is not fair to Julian. He deserves to know the truth. Don't you think so?" I did not respond. My silence was my answer. Henry could only sigh. In the days that followed, he came even more often, bringing food and small necessities. He always spoke to me gently, offering words of encouragement. With him around, my time in the hospital became less dreadful, but his words echoed in my mind. Was it truly right to keep everything from Julian? Was it fair to make such a big decision alone? A small voice inside me began to whisper, urging me to tell Julian. So one afternoon, I left the hospital without telling anyone. I had made up my mind. I needed to see him. If this life were coming to an end, then he should be there. Beside me, I went straight to the company building, filled with anticipation. But when I stepped inside, I saw no familiar faces. Confusion swept over me. I stood still, unsure of why I had come. A few employees passing by noticed and asked if I needed help, but I politely declined. Before I knew it, the crowd moving through the lobby swept me back outside. I stood alone, staring up at the towering buildings and the busy street, the noise, the motion, the overwhelming scale of it all. It disoriented me. My memories began to blur. I no longer knew where I was or why I was there. Then, as if by fate, I saw a figure walk past me. He looked so familiar. My heart leapt. I rushed forward and grabbed his arm. "Julian." He turned sharply. "Where did this crazy woman come from?" he snapped, shaking me off. I fell to the ground, stunned and shaken. A wave of fear swept over me, and my body went limp. Everything went dark. When I opened my eyes, everything around me was white. The hospital ceiling came into focus, and my gaze was empty, dull. "Emma, would you like to go for a little walk?" a soft voice asked beside me. "I can go with you, if you like." I turned my head slowly, trying to find the speaker, searching for a familiar face. But I saw no one I recognized. Perhaps the disappointment on my face was too obvious, because after a pause, the voice spoke again. "I remember how much you loved small animals back in college. Henry suggested we go take a look together." I did not answer, but he quickly started gathering my things anyway. He held on to me carefully the entire time, as if afraid I might disappear. As we stepped into the shopping mall, I caught sight of a familiar figure passing by again. Thinking of what happened the last time I rushed forward, I held myself back. I figured Julian must have been deeply hurt by me and would not want to be near me anymore. When we arrived at the cat cafe and saw all the kittens inside, I suddenly felt something in me begin to soften. A quiet ragdoll cat was curled up in a corner, reminding me of how I used to be. Silent, alone, I picked it up gently. It nestled into my arms, soft and docile, bringing me a moment of comfort. Then, as I looked up, Julian appeared again. This time, he was holding hands with another woman. The way they looked at each other, it was hard to miss how close they were. I thought maybe my eyesight was failing, but that figure kept walking toward me and eventually stopped right in front of me. The scent confirmed it. It really was Julian. I had just seen him so intimately close with someone else, and it turned out I was not imagining it. It was real. A bitter taste rose in my throat. "Are you divorcing me because of her?" I asked, my voice low. "How did you two even get together?" Before Julian could reply, the woman beside him spoke first. "Julian, since you are already preparing for the divorce, let us go. Let us not interrupt someone else's little world here." I looked up and recognized her. Sophia. She was Julian's business partner and had always shown interest in him, but Julian had rejected her before. I still remembered the night at that cocktail party when he held my hand and clearly told her, "I am married." That night, he stayed by my side the whole time and told me, "I want everyone to see how amazing my wife is." Now, thinking back on that moment, it only felt like a cruel joke, since I had not spoken in a while. Julian looked slightly uncomfortable. He muttered, "Yes, I am the one disturbing them. Let us go." Henry, who had been quiet beside me, looked upset. "Julian, you will regret this. Do you even know that she—" "I am fine," I interrupted Henry before he could say more. I had no desire to explain anything to Julian. Sometimes, hate lingers longer than love. Maybe if he remembers me like this, it is enough. I lowered my head to hide the tears that were about to fall. Gently, I tugged on Henry's sleeve to let him know not to say anything else. Though full of anger and frustration, Henry respected my decision and stayed silent. Julian noticed the small gesture between us, and his tone sharpened again. "What are you two pretending for this time? Emma, since you are so eager, why not go get the divorce certificate today? I will give you your freedom, and you give me mine. How about that?" His words felt like tiny needles pricking my heart, but I still tried to respond calmly. I had not even realized tears had started falling. "Forget it," I said softly. "I am not free today. Let us do it another day." Seeing my expression, Julian scoffed. Of course, his shifting attitude confused me. But at that point, I no longer had the strength to figure it out. I quietly motioned to Henry that I wanted to leave. Without hesitation, Henry took my things and led me out. As we stepped outside, he said in a low, apologetic voice, "I thought I was doing something good, but I only made things worse. It is not your fault." I reassured him, "I am really grateful to have you with me right now. I could never blame you." I smiled gently to show I meant it. As we walked away, I saw Henry glance behind us with a troubled look. I turned my head to follow his gaze. Not far away, Julian was helping Sophia into his car. He opened the passenger door for her. The very seat he once promised no other woman would ever occupy. That memory stirred something sharp in my chest, but I forced myself to stay composed. "It is all right not to tell him," Henry said, trying to comfort me. "He does not deserve to know." I joked quietly, "Do not look at him like that. If he ever finds out, he will be the one suffering the most." Surprisingly, Henry said nothing in return. I looked up and saw Julian and Sophia already kissing inside the car. My joke felt empty and foolish in that moment. Even I could not believe the words I had just spoken. I said nothing for the rest of the way. After Henry helped me get settled, he looked at me with a touch of sadness and said, "Please take care of yourself. Everything will be all right." "I will," I replied, just like I always used to. Finally, he left, visibly relieved. I had lost count of how many times he had said those same words to me. If it were not for my worsening health and increasingly disordered memory, I might have believed him this time too. I turned down the doctor's suggestion for surgery. I thought to myself, before death comes, I do not want to endure any more suffering. My condition was declining rapidly, and the changes in my appearance often caused alarm among other patients. So, while I was still clear-headed, I said goodbye to Henry and moved into the convalescent ward. There were many patients like me in that room. Their presence made the days bearable, but the long, quiet nights were difficult. I would lie awake, thinking about everything that had happened, and sometimes, I would cry silently. Since the divorce, I had not heard from Julian, not even once. Then one afternoon, as I was sitting quietly under the sun, a call from him came in. His voice sounded matter-of-fact. He said, "I have been busy with the collaboration with Sophia's group. I have not had time to talk about the divorce." I stayed silent. He continued explaining why he had not reached out earlier. Forget it, he said finally. You want a divorce, right? There is a private room on the 3rd floor of the Phoenix restaurant. Come there, the Civil Affairs Bureau is right next door. Without waiting for my response, he hung up. The call ended so suddenly, it felt like it had never even happened. But it had, and I thought, perhaps it is best to just end this quickly. I rarely wore makeup, but that day I did. I wanted to hide the sickly paleness of my face. Then I took a taxi to the address he gave. When I arrived, he was not downstairs. I called him, and he told me to come up to the private room. I hesitated, but eventually went. I knew Julian too well. If he had arranged for me to come here, step by step, there must be more to it. When I opened the door, I saw Julian sitting there, along with Henry, 2 elderly people, and a woman I had never seen before. In that moment, I understood what he was thinking. He believed I wanted to divorce him because of Henry. I walked over and quietly placed a dark grey tie beside him. It was the brand he always used, something I had just bought. I figured I would not have many chances left to do something like this for him. This would be the last. After that, I turned to leave. Whether the divorce was finalized today or not, I had no reason to stay any longer, but he stopped me. Aren't you going to greet your old friends? He said. The waiter, seeing the tension on his face, quickly stepped outside and closed the door. The elderly couple looked at Julian in confusion. One of them asked, "Who is this? Is she also a friend of Henry's? We have never heard Henry mention her before." Julian gave a faint, sarcastic laugh. Then he said, "Emma, is this the new partner you found?" He looked almost unhinged. I looked at him calmly and replied, "This is between you and me. It has nothing to do with Henry." Henry's parents looked even more confused. Henry stood up and could not hold back any longer. "Julian, with your attitude, she is bound to leave you sooner or later," he said firmly. Henry's words seemed to be the final blow. Julian completely lost control. "My attitude? And what about yours? Let me remind you, she did not choose you back in college, and she still won't." As the situation spiraled out of control, a wave of dizziness hit me. A terrible feeling crept in, and I knew something was wrong. I quickly turned around and walked toward the door. Luckily, it was not locked. I pulled it open and rushed out in the corridor. People passing by stared at me with strange expressions. I looked down and suddenly felt a warm wetness on my hand. When I raised it, I saw blood. More and more blood flowed from my nose, uncontrollably soaking my hand and staining the carpet a vivid red. The dizziness worsened, though the floor was flat. I felt as though I was sinking into mud with every step, 1 foot deep, 1 foot shallow. The hallway wavered around me, shifting in and out of focus. I started hallucinating again. I thought I heard Julian shouting behind me, "Emma, stop." I tried to shake my head, to answer him, but no sound came out. It felt like something had lodged in my throat, choking me. The blood kept pouring out. Voices around me began to scream in panic. Everything blurred, faded, and finally, went dark. Julian's voice grew clearer and more urgent in my ears. "What are you trying to run from? We have not even settled everything yet." I reached out blindly, trying to hold onto something to keep myself upright. I could not collapse. Not in front of him. Julian's anger seemed to rise because I stayed silent. His voice grew louder. "So this is what you want, to leave me for him? Is that your final decision? Answer me." Finally, he stepped closer. I looked up at him, and something in his expression shifted. His rage faded into something else. Shock, fear, like he had just seen a ghost. I wanted to tell him not to be afraid. I wanted to comfort him. But I could feel the warmth spreading across my chest. A large wet patch blooming over my clothes. My blood would not stop. Was I dying? I raised my hand, trying to touch his face one last time. In this world, he was the person I could never bear to leave, but he stood still, frozen. Maybe he was still angry. Maybe that was why he did not move or lean in. Even as I struggled to reach him, I stretched my hand toward him again, desperate to close the distance. I wanted to say something. Anything, but my mind was blank. Then he suddenly pulled me into his arms, trembling with disbelief. Yet even in his embrace, he held me so gently, as if afraid that touching me might break me. For a moment, I thought, at least he is not pushing me away again, even if this is just a dream. It is enough. But his arms shook violently. I had never seen him so terrified. His voice cracked like that of a child who had done something terribly wrong. "Honey, what is happening to you?" I wanted to answer, But everything faded to black. I hoped it was just a dream. I hoped he had never truly looked so helpless. When I woke up, the first thing I did was glance beside me, but the space was empty. I let out a soft, bitter laugh. I must be losing my mind, I thought, still thinking about Julian. Then Henry walked in. It had been so long since I last saw him. Since the day we said goodbye, I was about to tell him about the strange dream I had, but he spoke first, his voice low and rough, barely holding back emotion. "Do you know how much worse your condition has gotten?" he asked quietly. "Do you know how dangerous it was this time?" After saying that, he turned away, unable to meet my eyes, so it had not been a dream after all. Realizing the truth, my thoughts turned back to Julian. If I was in such a state, had he forgiven me? I wanted to ask where he was. Did he even know what had happened? Henry must have read my expression. "He is outside, answering a phone call," he said. Sniffling, "Following your wishes. I did not let the doctors inform him about your condition." "Thank you," I said weakly, "and I am sorry. I do not know what kind of event I interrupted, but I never meant to cause trouble. How could there be anything to hold against you?" he replied gently. "And on behalf of Julian, and myself, I hope you will not carry a grudge against him. He is just under a lot of pressure." I looked at Henry with a deep sense of guilt. He had always been kind, always willing to help, and he did not deserve to be caught in the middle again. He saw the apology in my eyes and smiled warmly. "Just focus on getting better. That is all I ask." I smiled faintly in return. Then Julian walked in. He had just finished his phone call. As soon as he saw Henry and me, he stepped forward quickly and placed himself between us, separating us with a tense energy. "Honey, the doctor said you just need rest. Let us go home together." "All right, let us not get divorced." But Henry interrupted him before he could say anything more. "Emma," he said, turning to me, "have you forgotten what happened between him and that woman?" The memory hit me again. The closeness between Julian and Sophia that day, the intimacy I could never forget. I said nothing. Julian looked straight at me. "I did not mean it. I was just trying to make you jealous. You know me, honey." His eyes were sincere, almost pleading. My heart, already tired, began to soften. Julian took me home. Everything was just as I had left it. No signs that anyone else had been there. Under his care, the color gradually returned to my face. We seemed to go back to how things were before. In fact, he stayed even closer to me than he ever had. At night, when I fell asleep, I could feel it. His arms around me, tighter than before, like he was afraid of letting go again. It seemed as though our relationship had been mended, as if we had found our way back to each other. But only I knew the truth. My body was growing weaker by the day. Still, I tried my best to keep up appearances. I made sure to look my best around him, hoping that one day, when I was no longer by his side, he would remember me just like this. One evening, trying to sound casual, I suggested, "Why don't we invite Miss Sophia over for dinner? I will cook." Julian, who was busy preparing something in the kitchen, paused. His expression froze for a moment before he shook his head and said, "No, I do not want anyone to disturb our little world." But I gently persisted, and after a moment of hesitation, he reluctantly agreed. We would invite her the next day, the following morning. I spent extra time on my makeup, carefully choosing everything down to the smallest detail. When the doorbell rang, I went downstairs to answer it. Sophia stood at the door with both hands full of gifts. I quickly called Julian to come and help. She looked at me with a shy expression and said softly, "I am really sorry about last time. I should have come to apologize sooner. It was Julian's fault." I replied with a warm smile. "We are the ones who should be apologizing. I hope you will not take it to heart." I took her hand and led her inside, showing her around our home. I had originally planned to cook, but Julian insisted I rest, worried I would get tired. So I sat and chatted with Sophia while he prepared the meal. Everything during dinner felt peaceful, even joyful. After we ate, while Julian busied himself cleaning up in the kitchen, I turned to Sophia and spoke softly. "Miss Sophia, do you still have feelings for Julian?" Her face changed immediately. She waved her hands quickly. "No, please do not misunderstand. Ever since he turned me down, I have not thought about it again. What happened before was just, I was playing along with him. That is all." Seeing her flustered, I decided not to beat around the bush any longer. "I do not have much time left," I said gently. Confusion crossed her face. She stared at me, unsure if she had heard correctly. I looked toward the kitchen. where Julian was still humming as he washed the dishes. A soft ache tugged at my chest. "I am sick," I said. "The doctor told me I do not have long to live. Julian does not know, and I do not want him to find out." Her face turned pale with shock. I placed my hand on hers and continued, "If you still care about him, I would be willing to help you." The news left her speechless. When it was time for her to leave, she simply gave me a long, silent hug. At the door, she turned to Julian and said earnestly, "Julian, please be kind to your wife." He smiled proudly. "Of course, she is my wife. Who else would I be kind to?" That night, as we lay side by side in bed, he looked at me with a seriousness he rarely showed. "Honey," he said, "I want to live like this with you forever. I do not care about anything else. I just want to be with you." I smiled and reassured him, like I always did. Since I left the hospital, he had become more sensitive, more anxious. Perhaps, in his heart, he had already sensed something. The days blurred together. I no longer kept track of time. Then, one day, a message appeared on my phone. It was from Sophia. It said simply, "I am willing." I stared at it for a long moment, then quietly deleted it. Later, I told Julian I wanted to visit the place where we had gotten married. Without hesitation, he set everything aside and began looking for flight tickets. I held his restless hands and told him I would take care of the arrangements. As the day of departure approached, I noticed something strange. My symptoms, dizziness, the occasional bleeding, had all disappeared. I began to feel stronger, more energetic, like a flash of brightness before the final darkness. I packed his suitcase for the trip. When he saw it nearly full, he looked at me, half joking, half serious. "Honey, are you trying to drive me out of the house?" I laughed at his exaggerated pout. Going on a trip is like moving. Better to bring more than less. The truth was, I did not know if we would ever get another chance like this, so I packed everything I could think of. He hugged me gently. "All right, whatever you say, I will do." At the airport, he was so full of excitement. Watching him, I felt something hot sting the corner of my eye. I quickly wiped away the tear before he could see. When it was time to board, I finally felt the weight in my heart begin to lift. I told him I needed to use the restroom before boarding and asked him to go ahead. But he held on to me, his hand tight around mine, as if sensing something was wrong. I smiled and whispered, "I will be back soon." Then I slowly let go. He had no choice but to give in. I watched as he walked toward the plane, his figure growing smaller with every step. Once he boarded, I quietly turned away and sent a final message to that familiar number. Then I stood by the window, eyes fixed on the runway, waiting. When the plane slowly lifted off, I imagined Julian's usual grumpy expression. And without meaning to, I let out a laugh, but the laughter faded quickly, and a sharp pain stabbed through my chest, as though a blade had sliced through it. So this was what it felt like, to be replaced so suddenly, so easily. My knees weakened, and it felt as if all the strength had drained from my body. My breath came in quick, shallow gasps. Someone reached out a hand toward me. I tried to grab it, to steady myself, and to take one last look in the direction Julian had gone, but I missed. Then I heard a dull thud, the sound of my own body hitting the ground. It echoed in my ears, strangely distant, as if it had come from another century. Voices rose around me, footsteps pounded on the floor, hurried and frantic. People were shouting, their words jumbled and sharp. I wanted to open my eyes, to tell them I was all right, that I just needed a moment to rest, but my eyelids felt sealed shut, heavy as stone, and no matter how I tried, I could not lift them. In the haze of unconsciousness, I saw Julian's face, smiling gently at me. My body felt light, as if floating, and I reached out, easily brushing his cheek, but the smile on his face slowly twisted into sorrow. His eyes filled with tears, and soon he was crying, broken and helpless. I wanted to speak. I wanted to tell him not to be sad, that I loved him deeply. I wanted to say, "It is all right," and "Goodbye, Julian." But no words came, only silence, and the sound of my heart whispering the things I never got to say. Thank you for watching today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, so feel free to share your opinions, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more great stories. We'll see you in the next video.